Hey there, music fans. Welcome back to the Real Music Observer. I am Dave. I am observing real music in real time for real people just like you and me. Talking about the Eagles today as more information comes out about the possibility that the Eagles will tour and will record a new album. Don Henley, having a little chat with a country publication not too long ago, hinted that it was more or less up to Irv Azoff, who is the band's manager, who I believe also manages Journey as well. Wonder how Irv is feeling about Journey these days, but that's another video, as I like to say. Henley hinted that there was a lot of pressure on the band currently, which, it's bizarre because last year after Glenn Frey passed away, I really respected Don Henley for saying, look, it's done. And without Glenn, it's done. We're done. We're not going to perform together anymore. Henley, I think, had just turned 70 years old. I'm not saying rockers are hanging it up at 70. I mean, ask the Rolling Stones. Ask a few other groups that are still going strong. And I just did a review of an album by Procol Harum not too long ago, and their lead vocalist is 72, which I thought he'd be a lot older. But the bottom line is that the music, is the most important thing for fans. And the integrity of the music, to me, is also extremely important. And bringing Vince Gill on, like I said, I like Vince Gill. I don't have a problem with him as a musician. I think he's a fine musician. But if Timothy B. Schmidt had dropped off and said, I'm not doing this anymore, I would have said, wow, what a brilliant replacement. Vince Gill makes the most sense, right? And I hear, of course, that, and here's a reason why that would be a brilliant replacement. I hear the Eagles are going to do Take It to the Limit, Randy Meisner song, and, Randy is still around. I don't think he is able to get up on stage and perform. Nobody really reaches out to Randy, and this is the Eagles' way. Have him come to a show, have him sing some harmonies. I know, basically because he can't sing at the level he used to sing at, we're just going to put him in a closet and hope he goes away or something. It's just bizarre behavior. And of course you have Don Felder out there, and I've done whole videos on Don Felder. Recently I did one being a little critical of what I believe is auto-tune being used, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm wrong. But I like Felder. I like him as a person. I think he's a superb guitar player, and he would also move the band back in a more Hotel California, rock and roll, Victim of Love kind of direction. So I'm thinking if they tour, they're going to stick. What's good about the Eagles, I guess, is they've got this older catalog, which fits Vince Gill well as far as style. But again, vocally speaking, they have yet to find the vocalist who sounds like Glenn. Now, Deacon, the jury is still out. I don't know what Deacon really sounds like. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos. They're really poor quality. I'm going to say he doesn't really sound that much like his dad. Now, when he starts singing and it's clear and it's recorded, you may hear more of his dad in there. I think Glenn Frey, everybody thinks he kind of has this sort of, pedestrian voice. I'm looking for the right word, in the sense that it's kind of a common sounding voice, but really, if you spent a little bit more time going through country artists and finding a country artist, I think you would have found one that sounds more like Glenn than Vince Gill. But I've learned that Vince Gill reached out to the Eagles. This wasn't a like Don Henley sitting down and going, yeah, let's recruit Vince Gill. Now, there is an association, though, on Don Henley's last album, which was a very throwback, traditional roots, country-ish album. Vince Gill played, I believe he played some live gigs with Henley, or at least played on the album. So that's where the association, I think, ultimately comes from. And Vince Gill's management thought, hey, Vince would love to be in this band. Let's be honest, Vince's career since the end of the peak of 90s country and all that stuff, it's been on the decline, so this is a smart move for Vince Gill. Is it a smart move for Eagles fans and Eagles purists? And I would say no. And the reason is because the Eagles are a rock band. They transitioned. They purposely, in fact, Glenn Frey was the one who wanted to turn this into a rock band and not a country band. He wanted to rock out. And he said, you know what? I want to be like, I don't know, a number of other bands. Led Zeppelin rocks. We sound like a country band. And initially, that's the sound they had, and it worked for them. It won them Grammys. It did a lot for their career. But the transition to Hotel California was remarkable. And then again, on the long run, which was almost like an R&B flavored rock and roll album. So they had completely transitioned away from the sound that got them on the map. And yes, of course, they play all the styles, and that's what's interesting about the Eagles. If you're a country fan, you're going to dig it. If you're a rock fan, you're supposed to dig it. And even if you like a little bit of blues and soul and R&B, it's going to be in there with Henley, especially the way Don sings. So the bottom line on this is it looks like there could be a tour after these two big classic East-West concert dates, and there also could be new music with this lineup, which I think would be very interesting to hear. I'd be actually more interested in hearing the new music than, say, Vince Gill performing Glenn Frey tunes. I think it's a tough go to replace Glenn. And if you look at all the other bands who have replaced people, Foreigner got a guy that sounds a little bit like Lou Gramm. All right, kind of like Lou Gramm. Styx, they found a guy that kind of sounds like Dennis DeYoung. Probably even less than the Kelly Hansen thing. Who else? I mean, you go down the list of bands. Chicago has now replaced their tenor twice. And they've got a guy right now, Jeff Coffey, who sounds fantastic and is getting, by the way, rave reviews all over the place where they go and tour. Everybody says, who's this new guy who sounds different, but he's hitting all the notes and hitting it out of the park. Now, if the Eagles had followed that roadmap and said, you know what, we need to do a vocal search, a la the guitar player from Journey, going through YouTube clips and saying, this guy kind of sounds like Steve Perry and so forth. And there's your other band, of course, the big one, Journey. And Irv Azoff, who is the manager of both bands, I think Irv probably should have sat down and said, you know what, before you go running out for Vince Gill, it's just name recognition, and I think that's what this is all about. Vince has got the name, and if you found some small-time guy who sounds like Fry and you put him under the microscope, and within that Eagles framework where people want to kill themselves after being in the band for too long, that might have been too much for the guy. I mean, it worked for the band Boston, though. They found their guy at Home Depot, if you remember that story. He sounds a lot like Brad Delp, although recently I've heard him and he's starting to lose it. So they may need a new singer. And there's a band called Don't Look Back who sing and look like Boston more than Boston does these days. In any event, it's new music for the Eagles possibly, and an extended tour. We're waiting to see what Irv Azoff will do. My guess is he's going to start shopping that band around for dates in 2018 and probably get them in the studio as well. I'm Dave, and this is the Real Music Observer, where again, we are observing real music in real time for people just like you and me. We'll talk again soon.